Hello there, welcome back to another sparkling edition of that Millwall podcast as we step into the Lions' Den with another former Millwall player. This one played 55 appearances and scored 6 goals. You can see him in the show title. Welcome to Marvin Williams. How are you, Marvin?
I'm good, Neil. Thanks for having me on, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad in these extraordinary times that we live in.
Yeah, indeed. Strange times, mate. But no, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Mate, you joined the club as a youngster, didn't you? Tell us, how did that move come about?
Yeah, so I was playing for a Sunday league team called Blackheath Wanderers up until I think I was at Blackheath Wanderers under 10s, under 11s, and I think under 12s. I started to kind of get quite a bit of interest from various clubs. Millwall was really the main and the first one that came in, Charlton and a couple of others. But from there, really, Millwall was the club that I went to, trialed, and signed. And from there, really, I never sort of looked back. And pretty much from under 12s to under, till what, 21? I think I left. Was it 21? I think maybe even younger than that, 20. I left, and yeah, it was an unreal experience for me, really. And from there, it was just going forward and going through the youth ranks, and it worked well for me.
Who did you support as a kid? Obviously, a Blackheath lad, stuck in between Millwall and that mob 3 miles down the road that nobody likes.
Arsenal. My dad, family, all Arsenal fans. So that was in the blood. That's who I grew up watching. Ian Wright in particular was the person who I watched a lot of. Obviously, I got a bit older on Rees and etc. But obviously, going to Millwall so young, that was when I really started to follow someone else, and obviously as I got older and had started to go to the Millwall games as a scholar and as a schoolboy, that was obviously a club that was close to me throughout the younger years.
Who were your Millwall coaches when you first joined?
Coaches, I had Andy Massey, John Yems, who funny enough, I saw Yemsy the other day for Crawley. Didn't realise he was there. So John Yems. Who else did I have? Alan McCleary, Nicky Milo. Yeah, that was it. I think that was it. 1 or 2 I was probably in between, but those were the main guys who pretty much had the majority of time with me.
Yeah, Nicky Milo, I think, was running the youth system back then, wasn't he?
Yeah, so Nicky was interesting. He lived literally 2 minutes from me in Sydenham, where I grew up. Lovely house Nicky had there, and we ended up at one point. He ended up just taking me in, pretty much driving me in a lot to training in his blue SLK Mercedes, and I forget that. And his cigar, he used to have smoking, his little skinny cigar, Nicky Milo, and I got really well with Nicky. Was he used to give me the odd call sometimes. Actually, funny enough, and say, Marv, can you come and help me to move something in my house? And I used to have to go up there to his house and help him move furniture, or he's got a new delivery or something, and he used to ask me to help him move it up the stairs or whatever. But bless him, rest his soul. He's obviously passed away. But no, I had a good relationship with Nicky and all the coaches, to be fair, that I worked with at that age.
And who came through with you?
Curtis Weston was the main one. I'd probably say that went on and had an impact within the first team.
Youngest player in an FA Cup final.
Yeah. So he was the real first one in that cohort of players who really came through, and we saw that was getting a real chance. We had a couple of the older ones, obviously the likes of Chernos, Moses Asher Cody, who was getting in and around things. Obviously Marvin Elliott, so Peter Sweeney. So those people that were kind of older, Barry Cogan, etc., that we played with. But in terms of our actual age group, Curtis was the first one who really came through and started to get a chance.
That must have been quite good when you saw him come through and you saw him get on in the cup final. That must have given you a little bit of hope.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, it was one of those ones where we was a real close, tight-knit group, that age group, and we had a strong age group as well in terms of actually on the pitch. And it got to that point where Wisey came in, and he obviously took a liking to Curtis, and there was 1 or 2 others, Dean Pooley, who didn't go on and I don't think made an appearance, but was in and around the first team. And we then started to see, all right, Wisey's coming in and he's taken a look at us. And as I say, yeah, as a young lad, it's in the changing rooms. Curtis goes off and he's playing with the first team and training. You then start saying, right, I want a bit of that. And and the good thing is those days, Curtis might have gone with the first team, but we always sort of stayed as a tight-knit group in the changing room. So you'd have a reserve changing room. So although he was training with the first team, he'd come back in with the reserves and after training for a period of time. So you even had that more of a real feel of being in around and hearing it and seeing it and seeing how he's getting on with it and stuff. So that was a real reason for us to keep pushing on, really.
When you first joined the club, obviously, the club was on its uppers, wasn't it? Obviously, cup finals, playoffs, Europe. What was it like to be a youngster in and around that kind of?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting because we were seeing things, and as you say, for me, we were having to go at that age. We were going to the games and we were watching, and we were in the stands, so we were seeing firsthand, Europe nights. I think was it Fair and Farish? I think one of the games I remember they played Fair and Farish. Yeah, so that was a night that I remember really well. And obviously the playoff, the cup final. Sorry, in terms of the FA Cup final, I was a young lad at that point, but we all went up on the coach to Cardiff. And also the semi-final at Old Trafford we went, and it was just so surreal, really. And I think that for me was at the first point where we was really getting involved with all that and seeing it, where you started to really start thinking about, yes, we always want to be footballers, but you actually started to see firsthand the real highs of the game. And you're seeing people like Dennis Wise coming, who's been at the top, and you're seeing how he works. And the players that he was bringing in at that point, your Jody Morrises and these people that have played high level, and even the ones that necessarily didn't play high level, but you can see up close the top players at that time, and it was really, really, really an unreal sort of path for us to see and to try and aim for. It was really good.
At what point did you think professional football could be a career for you?
Probably 11, 12.
So, really, that early?
Honestly, I'll tell you what, mate. When I was at 10 or so at Blackheath Wanderers, I was scoring an unbelievable amount of goals at that point. And it was at a point where I kind of, at that point in that stage, I was 10, obviously 9, 10, and I was scoring a lot of goals. And I knew at some point when I started to learn about scouts and et cetera, that would come along. And when I went to Millwall, I just always had, Neil, an unbelievable sort of desire to want to be a footballer. And I always never felt and it sounds a bit cliche, but I never felt at any point that I wasn't going to be. And that's not an arrogance. That was the burning desire I had to be a footballer. So every single session, whether that was as a youngster, as a schoolboy in the evenings, I remember I used to run from my house to Andy Massey. Funny enough, also lived at the bottom of the road. So I used to run from my house to his every single session we had, and I'd jump in with him to training. And that was just me. I'd never miss a session. I'd never be sick. I'd never, sit at home and say, I don't fancy it today, mum or dad or whatever. I was literally there every session. I just had a desire, mate, and that was it. And I never looked. And obviously, as you get older, you start to realize what it takes more and more. But I always thought, mate, at that point, 11, 12, I was gonna at least have a good chance of making it.
Yeah, but your careers meetings at school must have been boring.
Yeah, another without being a cliche, it was another one of those ones where you sit down and you get that meeting or that conversation. Or what do you want to be? Oh, a footballer. Oh, okay, yeah, but everyone wants to be a footballer. But what do you really want to be? Or what are your alternatives? And at that point, though, when I had that conversation in year 11, so in those days I'd already had a 3-year scholarship offered to me at Millwall. So at that point, it was almost like I didn't say it at the time, but I was having that conversation. I'll never forget it. She was like, "But not everybody wants to be a footballer. What do you want to be?" And I'm saying, "No, but listen. Right now, I'm leaving school. I'm going to a 3-year contract as a scholar. So that's what I'm going to put everything into." Oh, okay, then. All right. Well, good luck with that. And it kind of just ended up like that. So it was one of those ones where it was a quick conversation, and yeah, obviously, she probably won't remember that conversation, but I know the school in particular. I've gone back a couple of times, and they've always remembered those conversations that I used to have with them.
Yeah, there's no point in wasting everyone's time if you've
a
3-year deal on the table.
Yeah.
How did you do in your exams, knowing that you got this 3-year scholarship on the table? You get it right.
Yeah, weren't great, and I say that from a perspective of 2 reasons why I didn't do great. Number one was that the thought, and I was lazy, and I got to a point where my desire to be a footballer probably overran and overrid my actual education thought process. That was number one. Number two, a week before that, I shouldn't have been playing. But probably a week or two before my exams, I was playing for my school. And at that point, I shouldn't have played because I think I can't remember what we were doing for Millwall, but I shouldn't have played and I lied. And I went and played in a tournament. I think the winners got like PlayStations or something. So I was like, please, can you play? So I played. And stupidly, but it was one of those ones where we was playing, I got tripped up and I fell and I fractured my scaphoid in my wrist. And I remember going into Millwall and I'd had the cast on because I had to go to hospital the next day. And they're like, what happened to your wrist? And I said, oh, no, I just was in the playground and I fell over. Anyway, long story short, it was my right wrist and I couldn't write during my exams for love nor money. So I had to literally take every exam in another room and I had to have somebody write for me. So it was literally like, I'd have to say English, for instance. I have to write English. I'd have to spell the word. I'd have to put a punctuation, a comma in or a full stop. It was just an absolute drag and a nightmare. So by that point, I think that was the second thing. I was just like, you know what? By the second day of exams, third day of exams, I was just like, I can't do this. And I got a scholarship there waiting. So I pretty much just put it on the back burner.
Your kids aren't going to listen to this podcast, are they?
No, well, he's here. I'm not letting him. So stay in school, kids. Stay in school.
Exactly. So you get your scholarship, and it's a bit of a time of change at Millwall, isn't it? Obviously, Wisey's in and then out, and your club starts to go in a totally different direction, and not the direction that we're proud of.
Yeah, and I tell you what, that pretty much sums up my time at Millwall. I came through at a time where there was so much transition, and I think in the time that I was at the club, in the first team, which was what, 2.5 seasons possibly. I think I played under 4 or 5 different managers, and as a young player, it was so frustrating. It didn't help me whatsoever. Yes, there were things that I didn't do right as well, which I'm sure we'll go over. But it was frustrating. It was, I couldn't gain momentum. I couldn't stick with one manager who had belief or who would know me and know what I'm about. And it was almost like every time I'd kind of got going, a new manager would come in, and it was another change, and then a change of chairman and a change of owner, and it was just in one instance, as I say, it worked well because that one of those managers took a chance on me. But in the other instance, it was no fluidity, and it just really played havoc with me at the time within the club.
And what was it like, the club in general at that time? Because obviously I think Theo left and Jeff Burnage took over, appointed Steve Claridge, and then sacked him almost as quickly as appointed him. Yeah, what was going on with all of that?
It was weird because I think for me at that point, I was still just a scholar. So when in particular Claridge came in, I remember I was probably a third year possibly scholar. And I remember I used to hear a lot of the stuff from just within the first team section, because we used to obviously have academy youth team jobs. And at that time, when Claridge was in charge, one of my jobs was sort of first team equipment. So I used to be over there quite often. And I know that there was just talks of or used to hear things, whether it was a lot of set pieces they were doing at one point, and I know Claridge used to do a lot of set pieces and stuff, and I think the players weren't buying into it, and there were just things that you could just tell that they from the off, it just didn't quite seem right. And this was me on the outside looking in, so I guess it obviously was what I was feeling or seeing was true, because it didn't last long and he didn't last long. But I think that was when, I think it was Colin Lee that took over after that, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
And that's obviously who ended up giving me my debut. So it was a strange one with Claridge.
So what other kind of jobs did you do? Yeah, well, as a scholar, I guess it's just the usual, sweeping out the changing rooms, cleaning, etc. Was it?
Well, yeah, stuff we couldn't do now. Trust me, with the kids, obviously after everything. So back then we were doing stuff like I say. I think now they still should be doing it. A lot of these young lads, but obviously they get away with it. But yeah, we were doing sweeping the changing rooms. Obviously football boots. Match day first team equipment, so to get the first team stuff out, first team footballs. So that would mean on the muddy days you'd have to take them back in after training and wash the footballs in the showers. We did actually get once. So the mill, I don't know if it's still there actually. The academy training ground that was in Mottingham. I don't know if that's still there. The junior section, not the actual But yeah, there was a Mottingham training ground. I'm not sure if it's still there. We actually had to paint that one a few days. I remember Macca at the time, Alan McCleary. We all went down there, blue paint. Never forget it. We spent the whole day. They made us paint the training, the building, and that was incredible. It was good because for us those days we were just told what we had to do. We just did it. Now imagine that you get a lot of backlash of that. But it was good. It was at that point, as I say, we had a good strong team. We had a great culture. We got on well with each other. That group brought us closer together, and you'd be surprised how much of those sort of jobs go onto the pitch. That culture you have, and bringing it onto the pitch, and it makes you a stronger player, in different ways. So I would never change those days.
Yeah, when you've got scholars now earning 20, 30 grand a week, but they can't get them cleaning boots and that. Whose boots did you clean when you were doing it?
I had an unbelievable touch. I had Dennis Wise and I had Jody Morris. And Jody was honestly the best guy to have in terms of us. And obviously I went on to play with him at that point. And I remember the first time I met Jody, and he had this massive Escalade. So he just signed, obviously he had this massive Escalade. And obviously Jody's only small, as we all know. So it just looks strange. But he walks out and he obviously knows that I'm his boot boy. So he says to me, "What size are you?" And I was obviously at that point, I was a size 7. "Come to the car with me." So he takes me to the car, pulls out this pair of brand new Umbro boots. He said, "Here, mate, have those." He went, "You look after me, I'll look after you." And from then, it was unreal. He used to give me boots. And then I remember one Christmas, he comes in and said, "Right, Marv, I'll give you 50 quid. Obviously at Christmas, because that was the part of the year where all our scholars used to look forward to. There were some tight guys, don't get me wrong. There were some tight ones that didn't give their players their boot boys anything, but there were some ones lads used to say, "You're lucky." And I was lucky with them too. So Jody calls us in the change, calls me and says, "Right," he's got all the lads in the changing room. He says, "Right, Marv, I'll give you 50 quid. This is the scholar boys he's got in the change room. I'll give you 50 quid, or I'll give you, I think it was like 150 quid if you sing a song. And I'll give you, but you got to earn this 150 quid, you got to sing a song." And I was a very quiet boy, Neil, very quiet, very shy, probably awkwardly shy. So you can imagine me singing it. At that point in my head, it was like, oh my God, but 150 quid to a scholar is gold dust. So I'm like, I'm down for it. So he's made me stand up on the benches, and I've sang a song. And he, to be fair to him, he's pulled out the money after. "Now there you go, mate." And that was unreal. And I think that's how he was as a person. Just really looked after me. And then Wisey on the other hand, it was a different one because Christmas came and went, and he didn't give me anything. And I was a bit like, everyone was like, "Oh bloody hell, man, I thought you were going to do all right out of it." So Christmas came and went, and I would have asked, never ever. And I remember one day we were sat in the canteen eating some food at lunch. He went, "Marv, did I give you a bonus?" It's like, no, Wisey, you didn't, mate. So I just thought, "Well, but it's all right." And he went, "All right, here you go." So he pulls out his back pocket. He must, at that point, have had about, I just saw pink notes. That's all I saw, Neil, just pink notes. And it was a big, that's all I saw, mate. And then he just pulled out 300 quid. He went, "Oh, there you go, 300 quid. He just put it in my hand. And he went, "Sorry, mate." I was like, "No worries, mate. Cheers, thank you." And again, two really good guys, just looked after me, and I never felt as a young lad that they were mean or cruel or just kind of moaners, because some boys had some real moany guys. So they just looked after me and they were happy, and I always tried to do a good job of their boots in particular because they looked after me. So yeah, I've done well out of those two.
You were £300 and you didn't have to sing for it.
I know. Tell me about it. So it was worth the wait. It was worth the wait.
So what song was it that you sung? Come on.
I sang Usher. Nice and Slow. You probably don't know that one, Neil, but if you Google it later, mate, you'll find it. It's a decent one. Nice and Slow, Usher. Whenever I've got to sing a song, that's my go-to.
Really?
Yeah, that's my go-to. Bit of R&B.
Yes, so you know the words well. I
tried to. At that point, there's a little rap in it as well, but I didn't get that far. I was hoping he stopped at that point, and he did. So, but no, it was good. Really good laugh. But those are the things that kind of shape you, don't they, as a young lad? I think those are the good things that you go through.
Yeah, that's right. And but it's all character building.
Exactly.
So you're in your 3rd year. Did you think, I'm going to stay on here, or did you think, no, this is it for me?
I asked to leave. I'll be honest with you. I got to a point where it was a strange one, as I say. Like I mentioned with Curtin Weston coming through, there was I won't mention any names at the moment because I think I wouldn't do it. But there was a person at the time who was involved with who was involved in players who got contracts and who didn't, etc., etc. And again, I probably sound like a lot of people that were maybe looking for excuses, but at that time, I felt like there were a lot of favourites, and I think that, and one thing I've always tried to be, is if I'm going to get something, I'm going to earn it off my own back. And I felt there were certain players around me who with this particular person, tried extra hard, not on the pitch, off the pitch, to become good friends with him. And I think that this person as well, who was in charge of that particular side of it, as I say, really had his favourites, and others didn't get a fair crack. And it got to a point where, as an under 19, I was playing down an age group because you was allowed to. So you was allowed to play under 17 football and have one or two overage players. And at that point, as a third year scholar, that was me. I was playing as an overage player, and I was at this point, I'm kind of reevaluating everything because I've been at Millwall since I was 12. At this point, I'm playing as an overage player. The players who were my age group were either playing in the reserves or playing in and around the first team. So I remember speaking to Nicky Milo, and I said, "Listen, Nicky, I spoke to my advisor. I say it was an advisor. It wasn't at the time. It was a family friend, but he happened to be in that business." I said, "Listen, I spoke to my advisor first. I think I'm ready to move on." And we spoke to Watford, and I was going over to Watford. So I spoke to Nicky Milo and explained that to him, and he said, "Listen, we don't want you to go. We're not going to let you go." I said, "But Nicky, I'm playing as an overage player, mate, in under 17s. Where I'm a third year scholar. I've got the players who are my age also playing for at least reserves, and at that point as well, I was playing really well for the 17s as I thought I should have been as an overage player. So it was almost like, to me, it was felt like a bit disrespected. I felt just like I was always a lad that was never knocking on people's doors. I always worked hard, always at training, as I said. I just felt I wanted a bit of honesty. But Nicky, probably a great decision at that point. He said, "No, we're not going to let you go, mate. Keep working hard. Keep." And again, as I say, without saying too many things at once, some lads were getting to train with the first team. So why is he every day or whoever it was at the time, would always have, right, in the morning on the pin board or on the main board in the training ground, it'd go up who would be training with the first team. And as a young lad, you'd always go and look, just in case. And obviously you'd see a couple of names that were in and around your squad go into train. So that wasn't happening for me either. So at this point, I'm thinking, I'm getting no positive sort of
vibes, if you like.
Yeah, no positive vibes. Nothing to make me think that this is really going to go anywhere. So that led me to make that decision to go and say I want to move on. But as I say, it didn't let me. And then, as I say, Colin Lee took over. And honestly, one of the biggest things I'll always say to my son is, and even my academy players now, that things can change overnight. That is what happened with me in that instant. And I say overnight, and I know that's a bit OTT, but I mean within a week or 2 weeks of Colin Lee taking over, as I said, I've gone from the underage player to playing pretty much with the first team. It was crazy.
Am I right in thinking that he saw you playing a reserve game and changed his mind?
Colin Lee, this is.
Yeah.
So I remember playing in the training ground game. I can't remember who it was against. And I've done really well. And then I remember after the game, never forget this, Tony Burns, goalkeeper coach, who I love, Tony Burns, lovely guy. I remember him coming in. Yeah, I remember him coming in, and he said to me, "You on a pro contract yet?" And at this point in my head, as I said to you, I was on the way out. That's where my mindset was at. But showing the sort of person I was, I got that chance with the reserves that day, and I thought, I'm taking it. And I remember coming after the game, he said to me, "You want a pro contract?" So I said to him, "No." He said, "Okay then." So and that was it. He walked off. There was no sort of like, why not or anything. He just walked off. So it was a little bit like, it was good to hear it because it meant that I've made an impact. But at the same time, I still didn't know where it was going. Then he put me in another reserve game away at Fulham. And again, at this point now, I'm training. I'm in the squad with the likes of Alan Dunn. I think a couple of first team players had come down as well to play. Again, came on and had done really well. And this is where, again, things just went overnight. And I'll never forget it. Dave Tuttle. He pulled me one day after he pulled me the morning of a training session, and I went over to go and train with my academy with my under 18s, under 19s group. And he said to me, "Right, I'm taking you for a run." He just pulled me and said, "You're going running." And I didn't have the greatest relationship with Tuttle. I didn't have a great relationship with Tuttle, to be honest with you. And he pulled me over and went, "You're going running." And I'm thinking in my head, right, I can't tell you what I was thinking in my head about him, but I was fuming. But
yeah, it was pleasant, I can guess.
Yeah, it wasn't at the time until he said, it was me actually another player called Will Hendry at the time. And he said to us, you're both going running. So as we're walking, he was like, oh, you're going running because you're in the squad on Saturday against Coventry. I said, what? He said, oh, yeah, you're in the squad on Saturday against Coventry and the chances are you're going to start. You're going to get on, sorry. So I was like, oh, wow. And I swear I've never ran with such happiness in my life, mate. I was running, I was doing I was hitting the times, I was sprinting up and down. It was unreal. So, but prior to that, I actually had been involved in a first team fixture, my first ever one where Colin Lee took me away to Mansfield. And that was the first time I saw my shirt in the changing room. I didn't make the squad at all. But I went there, saw my shirt, and after the game, he said to me, do you think you can play at this level? And obviously, naturally, I said, yeah. And as I say, that's when the following session, that's when I got pulled for the running. And then, went to Coventry and I made my debut there. And it was just, came on the last 10 minutes or so, and that was it.
Yeah, well, Colin Lee had actually left by then, hadn't he?
No, he hadn't.
And David Tuttle had taken over.
No, not at that point yet. So at that point, Colin Lee was still in charge. I think Colin Lee was in charge for possibly maybe five or six games. And again, it tells you how sort of the turmoil at the time. I think it was 5 or 6 games we played with Colin Lee. And obviously at the time, the club were really struggling. So yeah, it might not have been that amount. It might have been 3 or 4. And then Tux took over. And that was an interesting time for me with him in charge. It was an interesting time.
So if we go back a little bit, but Tux tells you you're going to be involved against Coventry.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is go home and tell the family?
Oh, without a doubt. I didn't even wait to get home. I rang my mum straight away and said, Mum, I'm in the squad on Saturday. She was unbelievably proud, happy. Because obviously at that time she knew I was going through a hard time. And obviously I'd never moaned from under 12s up to under 16, 17s. I'd never moaned about being at Millwall. I loved the club. I loved how it treated me. I loved the values it put in me. And it just suited everything that I wanted from a football club. So at that point, even for me, it was really an emotional time. And I think that's when I realized how much Millwall meant to me when I went through that tough period. So at that point where I got the phone call to say, or the initial conversation to say I'm going to be in the squad, she just said, this is what I said to you. You just keep working hard and things will change. And that literally is what had happened. So yeah, it was a family. Obviously, I got a twin brother. He was unbelievably happy for me because he was at Millwall with me as well when we first came in together. And we came in as a partnership, and he ended up just going back to our Sunday League team. So he was unbelievably proud, and my older brother and my sisters, and my dad. So yeah, it was one of the greatest times, one of the greatest feelings. So
it's an away game. Did you get an overnight stay, that kind of thing? Bear in mind, Coventry's only about a week up the road, isn't it?
Yeah, we didn't. I think we travelled on the day. I'm certain we travelled on the day. And I just remember being so nervous. I remember coming out the tunnel, Neil, for the gate for the warm up, and just being stiff and nervous, and because I came through at a time where the club was struggling in the Championship, it was almost tougher because players in the warm ups, especially we had a young squad. It was almost like they didn't see me as a young lad. So you look at a young lad coming through now. In my head, a young lad comes through, especially in that kind of circumstance. You put your arm around him, you make him feel comfortable, go and enjoy it. It's a great experience. It wasn't like that. It was, and I'm not saying the kid they weren't in terms of intentionally being like that towards me, but I just felt there was a lot of people that had their own things to look after. And as you can imagine, it took their focus away probably from maybe Brendan and his youngster. So I just remember being in the warm up, really nervous, and my touch going everywhere, and people saying, "Come on, Marv, come on, like liven up." And I'm thinking, Jesus, like I'm just getting used to being there and being in this environment and warming up with music and bands and but how I am and how I've always been wired is in those sort of environments. I just kind of get on with it, and I just know that eventually I'll get through that and I'll get to the other end, and I just try to enjoy that as much as I could. Really,
wasn't a particularly good game. I think we lost 1-0. Matt Lawrence sent off, didn't they? Yeah. So that 1-0, and that's why I came on last 10 minutes. I remember just
on the sideline, like, Marv, get ready. And I just remember the running on the pitch. I just remember always saying, just your first touch, just make it a good one, or just do something that just sort of sets the tone for you in the game. I think the first one was like a touch, and the kids just gone straight through the back of me, and we won a foul. So I thought, okay, good start. But the intensity was just frightening. That's the one thing I will always remember. My chest was burning after the game. I just remember thinking, wow, the physicality. And I was at that age, I had pace, but I wasn't strong in terms of physically. And I just remember the physicality of the game was unreal, and the pace. And but yeah, as I say, just one of those things that I knew that I'd get used to eventually.
Yeah, well, I guess you had the adrenaline was flowing, all kinds of things. You must have been absolutely shattered when you got off. After whatever.
Yeah, I remember going in the changing rooms after the game. I don't even remember listening to what the manager's team talk was, if I'm honest with you. I was just sat there thinking, I've just made my debut in front of, I think, 9,000 people. And obviously at that point, the Rico Arena was pretty new. So it was a lovely stadium. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's what I remember. And a couple of lads coming up to me and saying, "What up, Marv?" And obviously, yeah, it was just a very, very strange and surreal moment. But yeah, crazy.
And then I think you came off the bench for the next 3 or 4 games, didn't you?
So I always knew that I was never going to be playing at the beginning, and it would be funny actually, because I go back to Tony Burns, and I think where probably the game against I was already kind of making a few waves, but the game against Derby where I scored the winner, I think that's when I really started to kind of make an impact, and the fans started to kind of really put their ears up. And there used to be games where I remember Burns used to say to me, right, the crowd would get a bit flat, especially the home games. And he used to say, right, go and just warm up. You're not going to come on, but just go and warm up and get the fans going again. And it would be very funny. I used to go and warm up, and it'd just be like fans getting going again. And they say, right, come and sit back down again. And I just got used to kind of being initially that sub that. But for me at that time, I was just living the dream. And at this point as well, mate, I was still a scholar. I hadn't signed a pro contract. I wasn't even asking to sign a pro contract, because in my head, I was just living, as I say, the dream. I had a friend who was an advisor, but I don't think really we took anything in terms of any directions of conversations like that until 8, 9, 10 games in. So I'm still a scholar. I'm still earning, I think, 120 quid a week. I'm just playing. I'm just enjoying it. I'm coming off the bench and getting on the games and coming off and just going with the flow. And it's so crazy to look back now, because it's like I didn't realize what I was doing in the magnitude of coming on as an 18-year-old in the Championship at that level, and playing at Leicester and Coventry and all these clubs. Yeah,
well, I was going to say how much we were earning. So it's about 120 grand a week. Sorry.
Yeah.
120 grand a week, was it? 120 grand a week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my God. Yeah, no, 100. Honestly, I was on a third-year scholar. I think, remember those days, it was, your first year was something like 70 quid. Your second year was like 90 quid, and then you got to like 120. And I remember as a third year, you used to really think you was rich, mate. You know what I mean? You used to think that you was doing all right. But I was never the way I was raised and the way I've always been. I was never financially driven in terms of, I was never, and it's just how I was. As I said, wired. I wasn't thinking, right, I'm in the first team now. I need to go see the manager. I need to go and see what I could be earning. And again, being really naive to the game, and I was really going back to, I was really shy and a real awkward guy, and I didn't speak to older pros or whatever, or even pros in general. So I didn't know about things like appearance bonuses. So when I'm coming on the pitch, I'm just thinking like an under 18s or an under 19s fixture. I'm not thinking about, should I be earning out of this or anything like that. So eventually those talks came though, of course.
Yeah, but that was actually going to be my follow-up question there. Yeah, you're on a scholarship contract. But did they give you first team appearance bonuses and win bonuses, or not that we won many games, around that time, and a goal bonus. Did they ever give you anything more than that 120 quid?
Not until I signed my contract. So I remember at that point, that's where a couple of players started saying to me, Marv, you need to speak to the club, and make sure they backdate it. And that was at the point where I thought, right, I need to go and get an agent or an advisor. So I had a guy at the time called Tony Finnegan. As I say, he was a family friend, Tony.
I know. Finn used to play for Fulham. Yeah.
So he's a family friend. And I remember sitting down with him in a coffee shop, and we spoke and we agreed things and blah, 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 blah. So at that point, I say people were saying to me, you need to go and get this backdated. And I remember saying to the club, am I going to get some bonuses or something like that? And they're like, yeah, no, we'll get it sorted out. And it kind of just got to a point where I don't think they were intentionally doing it, but whereas a quiet lad again, and I wasn't making too much of a big thing about it. I think they just kind of kept slipping their mind. So I spoke with Tony, and then eventually Colin calls me upstairs, and honestly, again, he turns around and he says to me, at that point, I'm on 120 quid as a scholar. I think he turns around and says 220 quid or something like that. I don't even remember, Neil, what it was, but it was 200 and something quid. And I went home buzzing. I swear again, I was like, oh yeah, I'm happy with it. Obviously, I've not told him that, but in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take this home. But I wasn't, again, I'm not money driven. I'm just thinking, I just want to be able to say I've signed a pro contract. So I wasn't fussed with the amount. So at that time, so I remember going back to my agent, Tony, and he laughed almost like, that's ridiculous. You ain't taking that. And I remember thinking, Tony, come on, mate. But again, I didn't know about I knew about negotiations, but I was just a real placid guy. So I didn't want to have him arguing with the club.
What your worth was, that kind of
thing. Exactly. At that point, you know what I mean? So he's like, Marv, that's ridiculous. So they've gone back in. And I remember, I think we agreed on something like 600-700 quid a week, something like that. Anyway, or maybe a little bit less than that. I can't remember, but I remember I always remember it was like a 900 or 950 quid appearance bonus or something like that. So I was getting more for an appearance than actually weekly wage. And that was unreal. And again, my first pay packet was what really taught me about taxes, because I didn't even know about what taxes were in terms of. Obviously I knew it, but I didn't know how much it hurt, because we were just scholars. We were getting minimum wage essentially. So when I got my first pay packet, and I came into the first thing at Christmas time, where it was a lot of games, obviously. And obviously I was owed money that was backdated. Oh my God, I got my first pay packet. I just rang my brother up. I was like, brother, what is this amount of tax? Is this right? Am I what is going on here? Because the tax was unbelievably high, but it was just a case of it is what it is, you know. And that was it. And that was how it went. But the funny thing was, that was about how the pro contract really worked out, was because I always say this to people is, so I agreed the contract, but I didn't sign it until probably about a week or so later, because there was no negotiations, and I didn't know I was signing it. And I remember turning up for the game against Everton. And I remember I think the chairman at the time was Peter de Savary. Am I right in saying that? It was Peter de Savary.
Yeah,
and I remember
him, wasn't it, that kind of era?
Yeah, and I remember walking through the main entrance doors, and someone said to me, "Right, you're signing your contract today." I was like, "Really?" I didn't realize it's been agreed. So I rang my agent. I was like, "What's going on?" He went, "Yeah, don't worry, Marv. It's all been agreed. This is what you're getting. Go and sign it before the Everton game. This is." So we've gone up. It's a great start to the day. I've gone and signed the contract. I'm happy with everything. Obviously gone and played the game and scored. And I always look back and I think, imagine if I just waited till just after that game, all of a sudden that contract would have probably had a who's on it. It would have changed slightly.
Because you'd actually scored the week before, hadn't you, against Derby?
Yeah. So I scored the week against Derby, and then we left the game, and we literally went on a trip to where was it in Torquay? Bovey Castle. So we literally left the Derby game, went straight on the coach, went over to Bovey Castle for the week, came back, and then we were straight into the Everton game. So during that time, whilst we were away, I guess that's when negotiations were taking place with my contract. So yeah, I turned up on a Saturday morning, signed it, happy as Larry. And then after the game, well, I did at the time I didn't think about that, but now I look back, I think, imagine if I'd have just waited. But yeah, it was Derby with the game, as I said, that really sort of springboarded things.
Yeah, well, that cemented you, didn't it, as a first-team player, I think, scoring the winner in that game.
And I tell you what, I was so, again, that was a really surreal moment, because as I say, I always said to myself when I scored my first goal, try and look up to my mum, because she was the one that was at every game, every match, every whatever we needed to be at football. She got us there. She didn't drive, but she made sure we got there. And I remember scoring a goal, and I remember thinking, I'm going to look for where she is. But at that point, you don't realise, when you've got sort of whatever it was at the time, 6,000 or 7,000 fans in the stadium, you don't realise you can't actually see anybody. As much as you try to, you couldn't pick her out really. So that was a bit of a non-existent one. But after the game, I saw a couple of school friends. I remember that. I remember as the guys going back down the tunnel, one of the schoolmates was like, Marv. And I give him a hug. And I remember going in, and Macca, Alan Materi, who for me was a huge part of my development. You know, I know unbelievably, especially as I've got older, how much he done for me. And I remember him coming into the change room and he congratulated me, and that was he was never an emotional guy, but Bacco was a tough nut. But he was, you could see he was happy for me. And yeah, I just remember, again, going back to my first, that's probably my first time I really started to understand what beer was, because I was not a drinker, I was a young lad. And I remember just having Budweisers put at me, and I'm drinking Buds. Honestly, I'm drinking Buds like I don't understand alcohol, I'm just drinking it. And then, like I said to you, mate, we finished the game, and I've got on the coach down to obviously Bovey Castle. Started to feel a bit lightheaded. Oh, what's that? My stomach feels a bit crazy. And I just remember going to the toilet on the coach and just sicking everywhere. Because I was thinking, oh, yeah. Everyone's just giving them, have another one. I'm drinking. And yeah, it done me. So, but yeah, you say it's all character building, that.
So 4.5 hours to Torquay, and you just chucked your guts up in the coach. I bet you weren't the most popular player on that coach.
I didn't tell him it was me, mate. So I just chucked up in the toilet, and I just let her shut the door and went back and sat down. That was me. So they must have been thinking back.
So if anybody listens to this now that was playing back then,
that was me, guys.
Marvin.
That was me, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, with that Millwall podcast exclusive.
Yeah, that was me.
So you've gone down to Bovey Castle, which I think Peter de Savary owns or something.
He did. Yeah.
And you're preparing for the Everton game. What were the preparations like, considering that you were probably suffering from alcohol poisoning for your first 3 days?
You know what? No word of a lie. I was sick for 3 days. I couldn't get out of the room. I was sick for 3 days, and there was no training. And it was really strange. Obviously, the club felt at that time we needed to just get away, be together as a group, and just relax. And there was no sessions. It was going to play golf. It was going for sort of just walks. It was chilling out, table tennis, pool, swimming, whatever we wanted to do. But there was no training involved. It was just a very relaxed. It was a lovely castle, as you can imagine. It was a very, very, very lovely place to just be, very chilled. But it was crazy for me because at that point I was still lapping up Derby, so it was almost like I'm looking on. I'm looking at the highlights of the game and seeing myself. I'm getting all these messages through. I'm seeing things in the paper. I got man of the match that day, and my mum's showing me that she's putting away the man of the match trophy and all that stuff. And I'm just kind of trying to take it all in my stride. And at the time, as I say, I was rooming with a guy called Will Hendry, who would come through the academy with me, and he started to, he's in my ear, oh, marvelous Marv, and marvelous this and marvelous that, and I'm just trying to stay level-headed. But it was that was probably a good thing that I was away for those few days, because I could just really have a little bit of time away from everything and just kind of really soak up what I'd done.
And you come back, and at what point were you told that you were going to start against Everton?
The day. So I walked into the changing room, and the way the changing room used to be set up, you obviously had your starting 11, and then you had your subs shirts always in a certain place. So I literally just walked in and headed towards the sub shirts. So as you can imagine, I got upstairs, I signed my contract, I walked into the changing room really happy, got over to the sub shirts, and I've not seen my name, and I was honestly like, no, I'm not in the squad. I've obviously signed my contract, and maybe they've done it today to kind of give me a little bit of a it just softens the blow a little bit. So I was like, Mark, I can't remember who it was. Someone said, Mark, your shirt's over here. So I turned around, I've seen them in the starting 11. I'm like, wow. And as I say, it was an interesting relationship with Tuts, but he probably said the best thing you could ever say to a young lad at that point. And he said to me, just go and enjoy the game. Just go and enjoy. You've got no pressure on you whatsoever. And I remember that, and I will never forget that day, because I remember that was exactly what I needed to hear. And that's when I went out there, because I thought I'm expected to not probably have an impact on this game. I'm expected to maybe even have a bad game in general. So even if I do okay, then I've done all right. And I just didn't think about the game. As I didn't overthink it. I just warmed up. I just went to the game. And the rest is obviously history after that. So 39 minutes in, I think it was... you race through, don't you, or something? And yeah, remember, I think it's I can't remember who it was. Someone's clipped the ball forward. I don't know if it was Richard Shaw at the time. Can't remember who it was, but they've nicked it or they've clipped it forward. And I always remember as a young lad, and at those days it was 4-4-2, quick wingers, big man, little man up top, and Ben May was the big man at that point. And I always remembered with Ben, he always got his fair share of headers. And I just remember, what's that?
Yeah, he was quite good in the air. He was useless. He was quite good in the air, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was handy, especially in our younger lads, because I'd worked with I'd played with Ben obviously through the academy as much as he was a couple of years older in the reserves. So I always knew what his game was about. So I remember him winning it, and I just remember gambling. That's what I used to do. That was my thing. Just gamble on anything that goes up, gamble and try and do your best with it. And I remember him winning it. I remember there was a bit of contact. I can't remember what it was with one of the players. And I actually remember thinking, right, just hit the target, Marv. And then at least you've got the keeper. And yeah, man, I just remember I kind of had a bit of contact, side-footed it, gone over him or gone to the left of him into the corner. And that moment now still gives me goosebumps, Neil. Honestly, that moment now still doesn't seem real. Because yeah, you know what I mean? As you can imagine, as an 18-year-old, you scored the game before. You're now starting against Everton in a Premier League side, in front of a packed den, and then I've done that. It was crazy.
I think I saw a picture earlier on for you. There's a photo on the BBC website of the match report, and you just stood there like this.
Yeah. That was it. It was just trying to I was trying to be cool and trying to act like I was. It's kind of what I do, but at the same time, you know,
you just wanted to go back shit, didn't you? You just wanted to go mental.
That was it. And at that point, my confidence went to a whole new level for the rest of the game, because you can imagine, as a young lad, I'm thinking, I've got Phil Neville, I've got Arteta up against, I've got Richard Wright in goal, you've got you know, all these top players, you know, in the Premier League, James Beattie, etc. at the time. You know, Everton were a good group at that point, solid Premier League side, and I've just done that, and that was it. I felt for the rest of that game, I felt quicker than everybody, I felt stronger than everybody, I thought I could jump anyone. I just felt at that point I was untouchable and
almost superhuman, I guess.
No, that is how I felt, and everything that I did came off. And I remember giving what was his name in the centre half, captain at the time, Everton. Can't remember his name, but I just remember giving him a real tough time at home and away, actually. And yeah, it was just an incredible moment. And then after the game, going upstairs into the player lounge, that was just another surreal moment. You got Tim Cahill coming over. Obviously, I knew Tim anyway from the Mill days, but Tim Cahill, Arteta's, you know, Osmonds, these people coming up to me and congratulating me after the game.
David Weir was probably the player that you think.
Yes, David Weir. Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, and I think that's when I thought really I was good enough, because after that game, to have the Everton players coming over to me, that was really crazy.
We can only think as fans what it's like to play in front of 16,440 and score. What was it actually like to play in front of a big FA Cup crowd against a Premier League team? Just words.
I'm trying to make it not sound as cliche or too. It's a dream, but in terms of trying to be more detailed with how it feels, it's a bit of an emotion. It's emotional to a degree, because you're on a football pitch and you're looking around and you're seeing all these people. You're hearing the music, you know, especially when you're coming out the tunnel and you're hearing the famous, obviously the then music. Let them come, and you're sat in, you're stood in the town. You're looking at, you know, all these Premiership players alongside you, Phil Neville and all these players I've said already, and I'm just thinking at this point, I'm sat here, or stood here, I should say, ready to walk out into an FA Cup game in front of a packed den. I've just signed my contract. I'm a professional. I've made it. It's so hard to try and describe that feeling, and you can't, because even now, as I say, it still gives me goosebumps. So it shows you how hard and emotion is to try and really put into words. But it's something that
is it a kind of body experience?
Yeah, even now I look back, Neil, and I think that didn't happen to a degree, or it was so surreal, because I watch it sometimes and I'm thinking, I can't believe I did that. You know, I can't believe I did it. And it's crazy. And then the next that same very night, and again, I talked to you about how sort of socially quiet I was, and I wasn't a party goer. And I look back, and I remember I always get upstairs after the game, as I say, into the players' lounge. And I remember
you did the Budweiser this time, have you?
No, I stayed away from this time. I stayed away from them. Toby Porter, I think his name was, wasn't it? I used to write for the South London Press. Toby
Porter. That's right, yeah.
You remember? I'll never forget. He came up to me. He went, "Remember this moment. Never forget this moment, and savor this feeling." And I didn't quite know. I knew what he meant, but I didn't quite know what he meant in respect of. I'm thinking at that point, I'm gonna get this feeling again. Surely, I'm gonna get this chance again. And I remember going home and just had a normal Saturday evening. I didn't go out. I didn't have any drinks. I just remember by 10:30 a.m. This is the sort of person I was. Sorry, p.m. I was laid in bed, and I was with the lights off in my bedroom, and I was watching myself on TV on Match of the Day, or the highlights. Honestly, that was it. It wasn't, in front of family. Like, it wasn't that. I was literally upstairs, knackered, in bed, watching myself in highlights. And after that game as well, I just remember looking at my phone, and I saw an unbelievable amount of messages from family, and friends and whatnot. And finally, my actual Sunday league manager put a bet on me to score a first goal that game, and he done well out of that as well. He done well out of that.
Because I think Leon Osman actually equalised quite late on in that game.
Yeah.
Was that day the highlight of your career? Signing the contract, scoring against Everton on your first start?
It's a tough one. Do you know why? People ask me that question, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's that or if it's the Derby game where I scored my first ever goal. And that sounds crazy, but in terms of the context of coming off the bench, we were drawing at the time. Obviously, to go and score the winner. And I remember the celebrations.
We were losing in that game, I think.
We were losing. I think Marv Elliott scored.
Yep, Marv Elliott equalised.
Yeah, and then I came on and scored. And I remember the celebrations for that game, actually. They seemed like they went on for eternity. Honestly, I remember that game. I remember Livers at one point picked me up, and I had my hands up like that again to the crowd. It was just a crazy, surreal moment. But that probably plays a close second. But I think, yeah, on that day, scoring against Everton, signing a pro contract, that is something that, even if you talk about writing stories or writing something you'd wish to happen in your career, you probably wouldn't even maybe come up with something like that. And that is literally, I know how lucky I am to have lived that and done that.
Because it's quite safe to say that we're actually toilet that season.
Yeah, it was.
So that was one of the high points, I guess, for everybody at the club at the time. And then I think David Tuttle, who gave you your debut, he was shipped out. You must have thought, what's going on here?
Well, no, it was Colin Lee that gave him a debut. Colin Lee, Dave Tuttle came in afterwards.
Tuttle.
Yeah.
Took you on as such.
Yeah, and then he took me on, and then he went on. And then that's like you say, it was just a transition again. It was another manager coming in.
I think it was Tony Burns and Alan McCleary this time.
Yeah. They took over towards the end of the season, and I remember the last game of the season against Burnley. I think we had an average squad of, I think it was like 21 or something. Like the average age of the group was like 20, 21. Tony Craig, I think, was captain that day. And I remember I scored that day as well. And I remember just thinking, for me personally, obviously it was a really, really positive season. Obviously the day at Southampton when we went down, I think it was Southampton, wasn't it? I think it was the day we officially went. Right, yeah. Was a crazy one. Or a tough one, but it was for me. It was mixed emotions. It was that feeling of yes, we've been relegated. For me, and obviously as a young lad, it's something that you didn't want to have happen. But at the same time, I had made a name for myself and broken to the first team.
Do you remember the Southampton left back that day?
Yeah, Gareth Bale, wasn't it? Yeah,
his league debut or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did. I tell my son that all the time. I said, he made his debut against me. I was on the right that day. He was at the left back. Yeah, but it was just a bizarre one that day because, as I say, it was really. I remember my family came, my brother, my mum, and my girlfriend, who's my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, she went and she was a little bit scared actually at the time in the fans, because I think the fans were a little bit rowdy that day. And,
we're just about to get relegated.
Yeah, so I think it wasn't the
we
most.
weren't to take it too well, were we?
No, exactly. So I think she was a little bit like, oh. And I remember stopping at so we drove that day. So I drove to the game, and I remember driving home and stopped at one of the services. And I think that was I knew the fans had really taken to me that year. And I remember going to the service station, and it just so happened again, me in my world, I just think I'm going to walk into the service station, and I'll probably won't bump into many people, but it just happened to be that had a lot of Mill fans there. I remember I couldn't eat a meal. People coming up to me, and it wasn't a way for me to feel like I didn't feel like, oh, leave me alone. It was just, again, a real surreal moment. Just sat there in the service station and people coming up to me and autographs. And, I think obviously, like you say, I was probably the highlight of that season. It was a real good fitting end for me for that year in terms of me personally.
I know one of our co-hosts on this, Omar, who's not with us this evening. He always talks about your goal against Burnley.
Oh, does he?
You remember it well?
I remember the kid headed it back. I think the guys headed it back towards his goal, and I don't think he's seen me. And I've just literally read it and sniffed it out and lobbed it over the keeper. But again, that day I just felt at that point I was playing like I felt I was untouchable. That for that last probably 3 or 4 games, and that day again was where it was a young team. I felt like I was playing with a lot of young lads who came through with me in the academy. It was a lovely hot summer's day, and I think we won 1-0 that day. But yeah, it was really good. I felt it was but a lot of those goals that season, and I look back now, I speak to him, and again going back to my son, I don't want to keep boring you, but I speak to him now because he's coming through with football now and he's playing. And a lot of those goals that year were all sort of one-touch finishes. And I think that's something I always try to do is hit things early where the keeper couldn't set himself. And a lot of the things I tried to do, a lot of that season, it worked. So, yeah.
So you're on a high, Millwall are on a low. I think you started to attract some attention from some bigger clubs, didn't you, around about that time?
Yeah, there was some talks. Everton, Charlton, West Brom. There was a couple of clubs that were coming.
Yeah, bigger clubs.
yeah.
So you can't really mention Charlton and all
that.
Yeah.
But there were some clubs that was knocking around. But again, I was just like, I didn't even know about that stuff. I remember there was a report in one of the newspapers. I think it's again South London Press that the club said that we don't need to sell Marvin. We're not looking to sell our best players, our young best players at the time. Didn't bother me. I wasn't looking to leave. I just felt, as far as I'm concerned, I'll go to the next season and do the same. Try and do the same again. But it just that following season was just tough period.
So, with hindsight, do you regret not leaving with that interest? Do you regret not getting on the phone to Finn? Get me out of here, please.
It's a tough question because if I was clued up more, I think probably I would have at least asked the question to possibly say, right, what's out there? But at the same time, I never felt that the fact that we'd been relegated, it would have hindered my development so much individually. I always felt that would come. The bigger, the so-called bigger clubs or the moves will come. And as I say, money wasn't a motivator for me, so I was happy with what I was earning. I was happy where I was at. I felt going into the following year, and this is probably where my mindset wasn't probably where it should have been, where maybe I didn't think about a new manager coming in who's going to have his own ideas. And whilst the next manager that came in, I think, which was Nigel Spackman, if I remember correctly, that year.
Nigel Spackman, yeah. And his legion of 1 million signings.
Yeah. And this is what, for me, was tough, because I've gone from already a turmoil season and a lot of change. I felt I'd done well individually. And I'll be honest with you, from within the club, I never quite felt that it was acknowledged to me directly through anybody. Apart from getting a contract, yes, but I felt I'd always done things my own way to get. And I remember Nicky Miles saying to me once, "Marv, well done to you for getting there, because you've done it yourself. You didn't hold to the back of anybody. You didn't do anything you shouldn't have done. You got there yourself." And I just felt after that first season, You know, I didn't get a phone call from anyone, and it wasn't, again, I need to hear anything. I didn't get a phone call from, say, you know, one of the directors or the chairman or someone within the club say, Marv, what a great season, you know, stick with us. Well, there was nothing that, and maybe I didn't need that, and maybe that stuff didn't happen then. But I just felt that there was never ever a direct acknowledgement of what I'd done that year, and I think they just almost took it as, well, he'll be back next year, and you know, Marv's Marv. We don't need to kind of show him that kind of that kind of conversation, that sort of thing, and maybe it didn't, but I just felt like when I showed back up again in for pre-season in League One, I was just, previous year what I'd done was irrelevant. It was totally irrelevant. It was almost like all these new signings came in. I just, Spackman naturally wanted to go his own direction, and I never not got on with him. He was a lovely guy. Probably too didn't help him, but I just never felt after that first season there was never a sort of a real push behind me to sort of say, right, this is where we want you here, and that's what I maybe think in hindsight, could I have possibly maybe looked to get it elsewhere? I don't know.
So Nigel Spackman's bought in his cast of millions.
Yeah.
Everybody's in and out. You mustn't have known what was going on.
No, just a young lad again now. I'm just getting on with it. I know there's new lads coming in. A couple are coming from Chelsea. A few came in from Chelsea, and it never felt quite right. If I was honest with you, Neil, it never felt right. It never felt like what he was doing was really going to work. We just felt it was too many people coming in, things that people were saying within the changing room. Again, I'm just a young lad still trying to live off of last year, not in the sense of hoping that gets me through this year, but more so I'm still on that high. So I'm coming into pre-season and I'm just thinking, right, let's just take it where I left off. And so, again, I also played a part in not developing as much as I could have done, but it just, so many things that I couldn't control held me back. And then, you know, I ended up talking about positions, you know, ended up playing that position. And I felt like in my first pre-season as doing really well as a championship centre forward and doing well, I felt that was the position I'd earned to play in. And then with Spackman, it turned out to playing that on the right wing, and I never quite enjoyed that. And just, yeah, as I say, it was tough.
I think it was a problem that a lad called Fred Omnimba had a few years later. Not quite in what position to play in, and you want to do one thing, the manager decides another, and off went Spackman after 12 games.
Yeah, and then obviously Willie Donachie comes in.
Yeah, but you must have thought this is a bloody case of deja vu, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. It's just you know, as I said to you though, he was a lovely guy, but you knew after a period of time, I remember first game of the season, I think it was against Chesterfield away. Was it Chesterfield? I think we got hammered.
Yeah, no, it was Yeovil. Yeah, but I do remember the Chesterfield game.
Yeah.
5-1.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeovil was the first one at home, but the one. Yeah, that was on my birthday. And I remember we got hammered, and I just remember thinking, this ain't going to work. We just didn't. The balance wasn't right. The culture didn't seem right. And it just didn't quite feel right to me. But again, I'm a young lad. I'm just thinking, oh, maybe it will change. And when he went, you always felt it was the right decision. But again, you're thinking, another manager. And this again for me, I've gone from last season. We've had a really good run. Nigel Spackman, he goes, and then another manager comes in, and it's almost like now, for me, last season's almost forgotten now at this point. You know, because these managers are no longer even thinking about that. They're always thinking about now, just trying to steady the ship and look after themselves to a degree.
And you have to prove yourself yet again to yet another manager who might have different plans to the last manager. Yeah,
and we had a fractious relationship, me and Willie, and I like Willie, and I thought he was and naturally he's done very well. You could, you know, there's no doubt about that. He turned the club around, he steadied the ship. A very, very calm man. He's a thinker. Very conscientious. We used to train. Never forget this. We used to be training, and we'd be doing a practice, and it would just say, "Stop, close your eyes, feel the wind on your face. You know, listen to this and listen to that." And it was crazy. I remember we used to sort of just open up one eye and look at the players. And you used to be thinking, "Is this real? Is he being honest there?"
Yeah, but this is Millwall.
yeah, exactly. We're on Calmont Road there, mate. We're trying to train, but he was very like that, very methodical. As I say, very much and he just wanted hard, strong, reliable men. And I didn't fit the mold of that. And as I say, I wasn't playing well, and I wasn't playing particularly great, but then I don't think anybody was at that time. And as a young, and I still was a young lad, Neil. I think people just thought because I'd come in last year and I was around, and as Willie coming in, and with a lot of changes of managers, I think people just started to think I was a name in the squad, and I'd been around for not a long time, but I was kind of used to that, and I wasn't. And one of the biggest things I think I never had at that time at the club was anybody that was consistent enough to be around to put an arm around me and show me as a young lad, I like you and I want you here and I want you to be a part of this long term. And it was just always constantly another a battle. I felt uphill.
I think what you probably needed was what happened the following season was when Kenny Jackett came in. I think you needed somebody constantly there, didn't you? Not playing under 5 or 6 managers, because I think under Spackman we were going down again, weren't we?
Yeah, without
but let's not make too many bones about it. And Donaghy has to come in, and you were probably a veteran by then because there was probably nobody left from the season before.
And that's what it felt like. I think there was a couple of players still left, obviously Marvin Williams and whatever, and they by that point, Marvin Williams and those players, they'd played, the players who were around, they were still probably 2-3 times more games than me in terms of 2-3 times more games. They played more than me. So I was still, whilst I was one of the ones that had been around, I was still a young lad. And even throughout that period, I actually got offered a new contract because I actually, on my initial contract, I had, I think I came in with 25 games left of the championship season, and the club had put in my contract 25 appearances, you get a new deal. And I remember one game that year through injury, and I played 24. And the club said to me, "Marv, listen, we unbelievable. We didn't envision you getting to 25 games or appearances so quickly. So well done." Sat down and more than doubled my wages, and the money was not an issue whatsoever. And I turned it down. I knew I think it was a new 2-year or 3-year deal, and it was in negotiations anyway. Tony wanted to try and get more. That was Tony. That's another conversation. But the money was very good. I was young, still 18 at the time, 18 going on 19, and the money was very good. And I turned it down, mate, because I just felt I don't want to commit to something again where only a year and a half or whatever it might have been on at that point, a year on or whatever it could have been. I had so many different managers, so many changes.
And then I think midway through that season, you had a loan spell at Torquay United. And bear in mind that you were in our first team at the time.
Yeah.
Weren't you? What was all of that about?
I wasn't playing in the first team. I was in and out. And it got to a point. I always remember there was a period I wasn't playing, and I wasn't playing enough, but I wasn't getting reserve football. And I remember a conversation I had with somebody in the physio room, and I was told by one of the first team coaches, Willie Donaghy, he doesn't think you're ready yet to be playing week in, week out in the first team, but he thinks you're too good to play in reserves. But he doesn't want you to go on loan. So I was like, okay, so I can't go. I'm not going to get minutes in the first team right now, as much as I'd like to keep fit. I'm not going to play in the reserves because you're saying to me I'm too good to play in the reserves. But I can't, and I wanted to play reserves by this point as well. I wasn't even being big time. I wanted to play reserves to get myself some fitness. Yeah. So I was told I couldn't play reserves because I was too good. And at the same time as well, I was then being told I can't go on loan. So in my head, I'm like, well, where am I going to get minutes, or where am I going to get to a level of game time where I can show you what I'm capable of? And we're still in the background. Me and Willie are having a little bit of a back and forth about what my best position is. And at that point as well, me and Tony at the time, we're having a little bit of an issue because I'm saying to him, listen, I want to go on loan, and he's maybe not paying as much attention as I would like him to. But at the same time, he when he needs to do things, he's done things right. So I can't knock him in that respect. But with Colin Lee, no, it wasn't not Colin Lee at the time. A phone call came in, and from Torquay, and I just said, "Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it." And I just wanted to go and play. And again, I just wasn't thinking about levels. I wasn't thinking about what I've achieved. I just felt like I wanted to kickstart again and rejuvenate what I felt was a downward spiral at that moment, and it done that. Obviously, the first game I scored
against Wycombe. Keith Cole was the manager of Torquay.
Yeah, Keith Cole, lovely guy. And then it got cut short. So, and then I came back.
Did you find his excuse where he said you're not ready for regular first team football a bit distasteful? Because bear in mind, you'd played 24 games in the Championship the following season, arguably our best player, and then you drop down the division. He tells you you're not experienced enough. You're not good enough to play at a lower division.
I think there was a bit of both. I think, like I said to you, I was always. I think now I look back, I was probably a little bit hard-headed, and I was probably a little bit not as honest with myself, and I probably wasn't playing that great as well as I would have liked, and I probably knew that, but at the same time, I also was very adamant, and I was always, whilst I was a quiet kid, and I didn't like confrontation. If I felt as though I needed to say something, I would, and I just felt. And whether it was just him thinking, well, listen, Marvin, I need to go and sort this. I need to get this group stable, and I need to do it my way. I just felt I wanted to really have a chance up front, and I just felt my first year in the Championship deserved that. And I just, and going into the second season in the division lower to just not really get a run at it and a real good chance. I just felt it was a little bit it was just hard to take, and maybe it might not have worked out, and maybe it wasn't the right decision. And I think at the time, you got Darren Byford was scoring goals, who was an experienced striker doing really well. So maybe I just didn't fit what he was looking for in terms of a centre forward, and I ended up having to battle out on the right wing, and I just didn't feel ever like that's where I really wanted to play, and it showed. And yeah, I just felt that's why I had a bit of a clash. I just didn't think it was an answer that I wanted, and then I thought, all right. By that point, to be honest with you, Neil, when I got back from the Torquay spell, I probably knew I was going to be going. I knew I'm leaving in terms of me making that decision to go.
And then you scored. you scored, I think, in your second game back. Was that against Doncaster or somebody? Yeah,
Doncaster away from home. Remember that Paul Hubert's with a cross and good finish. But at that point, he was bringing in experienced players. Like I said, that's what he wanted, Willie. Experienced, strong players. And I just kind of got a bit lost, mate. I'll be honest with you, I got kind of lost in between it. Marvin, that guy who had the season in the first year, was kind of forgotten. I was kind of just like another squad player. And I never wanted to live on, as I said. That wasn't, don't take that the wrong way. I wasn't trying to live off of that. I just felt that as a young lad, I would have liked the club to have maybe understood what they maybe had there and the talent that was maybe in me at that point. And if we're not going to play him, let's tell him that. But let's tell him we want him here, and we want to have him here for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And when I took down the contract, there wasn't really a fight to make me sign it. So apart from a little bit of, I had a conversation with the chairman at the time who rang me when I said I wanted to leave. Other than that, there wasn't really a battle.
And you ended up going to Yeovil. What was you thinking behind going to Yeovil at the end of that season?
Just a new environment. I just wanted somewhere different. People say you'd only been at Mill for a little bit of time, because I said I wanted to leave and go somewhere different. But people forgot I'd been at Mill since I was 12. So I just wanted to go and experience something different. Again, I wasn't thinking about trying to stay at any level. I just wanted to. Yeovil came in. As I said, the chairman rang me and said, listen, we want you to stay. We've had an offer come in, but we want you to stay. But we won't stand in your way. So I said, okay, well, I want to go, Mr. Chairman. I really do want to go. All right, no problem. And Willie Donachie rang me and he said, I want to go. No problem. Good luck. And it was just a change of environment. I spoke to Russell Slade, really liked what he had to say. I went in, and I'm always somebody that just takes chances. I don't care about where it is. Obviously you can see I went and played in Sweden. I don't care about all that stuff as to where it is. If I think it's right for me, I'll do it. And if it doesn't work out, which it didn't really, then so be it.
Am I right in thinking, you'd actually must have played against Yeovil a couple of times for Millwall? I know we briefly spoke about that 1-1 game, and then I think there was a game over Easter that year, wasn't there? away,
Yeah. Yes.
where we lost, I think. Did we lose 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that?
At what? Me at Millwall, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, at Yeovil, this is.
Yeah. Yeah, when we went down to Yeovil. So you must have been aware of it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I was definitely. I remember that game. I can't remember exactly what the score was, but yeah, I remember the club. I remember going there. I remember it was different worlds. It's different world. There were different worlds, and I realized at that point how good Millwall was in respect of its training ground, its facilities, in comparison to Yeovil, because at Millwall that's all I knew. So having that lovely, at that point to me was a standard but lovely canteen to eat after training. Obviously, changing rooms and training grounds separate to the stadium, etc., etc. To then come to Yeovil, which at that point, no disrespect to the club whatsoever, but it was a total different world where, you were lucky if you were given lunch after training. The training pitch was pretty much just another set of pitches high up on a higher bit of land by the ground. But I bought into it. I bought a house there, mate. I didn't try to sort of go in and sort of semi half-hearted. I went into 100%. As I said, I bought a house down there, and I thought, right, let me set up shop and let me give it a crack. And I had the injury though in the first few months, and that pretty much killed the season.
And then I think you ended up not long afterwards at Brentford.
Yeah,
and you ended up playing against Millwall. That must have been a surreal experience.
Well, I didn't make that. I wasn't in the. I was injured that game. I didn't make this. I wasn't in the squad that game, which was an interesting one because I was really looking forward to playing in it. But I think I was injured that game. Sure, I was. If I remember rightly, but
there was a 1-0 defeat, I think, for Brentford.
Yeah, I'm certain. I don't think I was available. I don't think I played that game, but yeah, the wife became pregnant that year, or the girlfriend at the time. And
you played for Yeovil against Millwall, actually. Sorry, and you came off the bench, didn't you?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and that was very surreal, very strange. Because as I said, I've not only had I been going to the Den or playing at the Den as a first team player, I'd been going to the Den as a young Millwall fan, essentially from 10, 11, 12, all the way through. As a scholar, after a Saturday match, going to the game, doing the first team jobs. So Mill was another home for me. So to go on and play there as an opposing player was really strange, really strange. Even being in the away change room was just really strange. But yeah, this is football, and it was just it's just
traditional Millwall welcome off the crowd.
I done all right. I was all right. Yeah, Mill was always so good to me. Honestly, I always remember this time where I think it was his first season. It was a tough time for the club, and I remember the club almost the set of fans. They almost barricaded the players in the ground. They were at the front of the ground, and I remember the security saying, "Guys, do not leave the ground for the time being." A bit of the club, the fans were a bit rowdy. Obviously, I think they was upset we'd lost the game or whatever. I remember. What's that, sorry, mate?
Yeah, it was a pretty standard response.
Yeah. It was, but I never felt in any way, shape, or form. And there were players that wouldn't leave; they would not leave, and probably rightly so, because there was probably someone that was getting some abuse held at them. I never felt any way uncomfortable. I just remember leaving the ground, and the fans were like, "Marv, no, let Marv through." But, get to your car. I remember I was with my, I was with family, and my family were behind me. But I just always felt comfortable. I never felt like I was over, took any real strong abuse. Whenever I came back, I was good as gold. Whenever I was injured, I'd sit in the stands with the fans. Whenever I was injured, I was never one that was like sat anywhere else. I sat with the fans in the family section. So it was always a club that always sort of took me in their hearts, really. And that's why it will always be something close to me, that club, because it's always been good to me.
Then you mentioned Brentford, so your girlfriend was pregnant, or your wife was pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
Start on playing against us because you were injured, did you say?
Yeah. I remember being injured. I was injured one. I can't remember what it was we were playing in, because obviously it was different leagues. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember there was an injury. or it could have. Yeah, no, I think it was an injury. I can't remember what it was, and that was a bit of a downer, really. But again, I probably found it a better thing not playing against Millwall because I don't think I enjoyed that. I don't think I ever enjoyed going back to Millwall when I as an opposing player, as I said. So it wasn't a bad thing for me, really.
Then injury ended your career, I think, didn't it? Your Achilles gave up. And then you started playing around non-league football.
Yeah.
Quite some time. Was that difficult, experiencing the highs of Everton?
No.
Turning out in non-league football?
I enjoyed non-league more than professional football. That is with that. And I say that so confidently because I feel a lot of my professional career was ups and downs, politics. Yes, there were some unbelievable highs, but then there were some real lows. And I just felt the people in the game you just couldn't ever know if it was true or if they were ever being open, honest, transparent, whatever it was, whether it was agents, whether it was managers, whether it was players, teammates, directors. I just always felt like I was constantly battling. And I don't mean as in battling, arguing, but just never always. And that might have been part of me as well, a young lad, and what I'd been through at Millwall. And I never felt ever settled in professional football. And when I went to non-league, a total different environment, as you say. It's non-league football. It is what it is. It's you're dealing with part-time players. Luckily for me, though, I always managed to stay in non-league. Pretty much 95% of the teams I was at, who were still full-time training. So I didn't really do the evening training. I was very lucky to still stay full-time. But managers I worked with were a lot more down to earth, a lot more honest, a lot more open. Contracts would be done within 2 days, 2 hours, maybe. It was just, it was just really how I loved it. And people will always everyone's different, aren't they? And everyone obviously likes things how they like it. But for me, that at that moment in my career, it was exactly what I needed, because I took a break out. I stopped. I think I went to Stevenage. I took a break out, and I remember getting a phone call from Graham Wesley at Stevenage. And he said to me, he was speaking to me for 5 minutes on the phone. I didn't know who it was until he said to me, "Do you know who this is you're talking to?" I said, "Not a clue." And I remember speaking to him, and I went in for training, and that was what pretty much finished me off, Graham Wesley, in terms of I needed a break, because his training regime was unreal. It was starting at 10, finishing at 5 p.m. every day. And that was it, really. I just took a break, went to non-league and loved it.
And we'll just bring us up to date now. You coaching at Sutton United?
Yeah, so that's where pretty much I finished at Tunbridge Angels, but I really stopped playing up at Sutton, where the Achilles gave up. And the manager at the time I got on really well with, and I just said, "Listen, I'm going to stop playing, but I would love to set up an academy." So at that time, we never had a 16 to 18 academy. So we set it up. And now we run a 135 boy academy program at Sutton. I don't get to coach as much now, because obviously with such a big program, a lot of my job now is overseeing the whole program and all the elements that goes into that. So now we're just looking at continuing to develop players, get some players into our first team, get some players into bigger clubs up the ladder. And continue to just try and that's for me that's what it's about. I come through an academy. Academy football is what I came through, so that's in my blood. That's what I love, and that's what I'm glad I fell into this job, because it perfectly fits with what I've always been sort of around, really, in terms of as a young lad and what I've been brought up in.
So if Millwall ever came back, or a professional club came back and said, "Marvin, come and run our academy," would you be interested?
Yeah, no. Do you know what? I come back and went for a couple of years ago. I was actually going to watch training, a lot of the Millwall sessions. So Andy Massey, funnily enough, is still there. I think Massey's been at Millwall for
about 1,000 years, hasn't he?
Oh my God, he's just an absolute trooper. So he's been there for years. So I'll go back in, obviously, and I was going in and I was watching his sessions, which was really weird, because it was almost like I'm watching him and he was coaching me. So that was a really surreal moment. So yeah, no, I still try and keep in touch with people within the game, and as I say, Mill under 18s came to us last season. Chris Perry and a few of the others brought down the under 18s, and we played them in a friendly, which was a really good game. So yeah, I'm just trying to continue to learn and watch different sessions and different people and see what they can do and try and sort of take little bits and bobs here and there, and also try and take what my career's given me and the good parts and trying to give them put them into the boys.
And treat people probably a little bit better than you were treated.
Yeah.
Various stages. Show them the love, I guess.
Showing them love and just being honest. I've always said it. If you're honest, I'm happy. Just be honest with me. Don't sort of go around the houses. Don't try and sort of sugarcoat it. Just tell me as it is. And like you say, if someone's doing well for you, then it's like anything. It's a if you look at it from a business perspective, if I've got an asset that's doing really well and has value, I'm going to look after it. If I've got something that's going to if you look at it from a business, pay dividends later on down the line, I'm going to look after it. I'm going to grow it. I'm going to hone it. And I just felt, for me, especially at my time at Millwall, it was probably at the wrong time in respects of where I came through. Great time, but a wrong time in terms of really having someone there to say, right, this kid's going to stay here long term. We're going to look after him. That just never happened.
It's like what we said before, isn't it? Before we'd done this, that you'd had to listen to the Cherno interview we did. And again, it was the same with him. He was, the way he was treated and such. It was, I think it was just that era in football where, youngsters weren't necessarily given the respect what possibly they were due or the courtesy what they were due. Hence why now he's gone into being an agent and all that, because he said, you need to check on the mental health of the players. You need to make sure that, 5-minute call is nothing.
Yeah.
But back then, you weren't getting that support. The mental health issue, what goes with it now, wasn't really understood back then. So it was just you're in a demanding sport. You're in a man's sport where mental health just wasn't looked at.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head, Mickey, mate. It was that, mentally for me, coping with some scenarios I couldn't cope, and I've sometimes lashed out in anger. And that anger was maybe just saying at times I want to leave or I want to go on loan. It was really tough. There's no one to speak to. And the funny thing was actually they actually had a psychologist at the time that used to make us see. I think he worked with the Miami Dolphins for a little bit. But it was unknown at those times. So we would go in and he would just be very, very sort of generic and when you think about scoring goals, visualize it and visualize that. And it was never nothing that ever really, broke any real barriers. But I would have loved to then to have just spoken to somebody and just say, listen, guys, this is how I feel. I feel like I've had a great first season with the club, but right now it's not a case of felt not valued, but like you said, use the word there. I just felt like there was I didn't maybe get the courtesy that sometimes I think I deserve, just to say, right, Marv, we like you after year one. I think another club, if I'd have done what I'd have done, I might have had a 4 or 5 year contract. It's not about money, but I mean, is in the intention they might have done and put to me was, here's another 4 year contract, or here's this, or here's that, or this is just shows you what we got. But because I guess the club were in transition and people didn't know if they were coming or going, I just think the squad probably lost its soul. The club at that time probably lost its soul on the pitch. And then, whoever was coming in next was just like, right, I want to rebuild it. I want to do what I want to do. I'm not interested in that season anymore. And it just kind of felt as though, it was all forgotten quickly. So
what's your greatest bit of advice for a kid coming through the game now, coming up into the game? Because obviously, you started with Millwall from 9, and you didn't know whether or not you could get to 17. In theory, you could get to 17 and be told, good, thanks very much. You're 15, 16, your kids, what you look after now. Yeah. What's the great bit of advice you feel that you can give to a kid now?
Really good question. Always be honest with yourself in terms of how you're feeling and what you're feeling, and speak to people around you that you trust and love the most, because they'll always tend to be as honest as they can with you. And That for me is, if you take football out of the way completely, like you say, going back to the mental side of the game, I think that's the toughest thing, because you are in such a demanding sport where you'll hear things and it will be cruel and it will be ruthless, and you don't know sometimes if what you're hearing is true or if it's right for for you. And there were things that I felt that at my time was probably better to do, and there was a huge part of me that wanted to stay at Millwall, a huge part at that age wanted to stay at Millwall, but and in hindsight, if someone had just said to me, Marvin, listen, stay, you need to just stay and maybe do this or maybe do that, someone within the club, I would have done. So for me, it's for these young lads, really just really listen to people around you that you know and you trust and you love and you care about. Just be honest with yourself and what you're feeling, and continue to just do what you're doing and follow your path, and don't be afraid to change your path if you need to, because some people follow things because they think it's the way to do it. And you'll get there.
Marvin, we've been going for 1.5 hours. That probably seems an appropriate place to leave this interview. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
No worries, Neil.
Probably been one of our best interviews, I think, that we've done in this series, and we'd just like to wish you all the very best for the future.
Top man, Neil. Thank you so much, Mickey, mate. Thank you guys so much.